Right, so whilst we've seen Keir Starmer bid goodbye to his First Minister, though if you excuse the pun, the reality is likely more that the former Transport Secretary Louise Haigh was thrown under a bus for convenience, and the probable truth behind that story has got nothing to do with either a mugging or a phone. And you then contrast that story and the consequences of that with what David Lammy has literally just done on film at the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, what he has said there, and you'll be stupefied by thinking how in God's name has he not been sacked over that, let alone his backside being allowed to touch the floor as he got the boot. Once again, it is the matter of Israel that has come up, and once again David Lammy, the idiot that he is, has come out with the most deranged comments since the last ones he got away with, telling Parliament that Israel cannot be committing a genocide because not enough people have been killed, deranged as that was, but he got away with that. But now he is struck again, though this time the stakes are far higher. Lives threatened in fact by his words, and he lied more than once at that. Lying to Select Committee, distorting the truth. If Louise Haigh got pushed out as many suspect she was, Lammy should have been sent flying out of the door by now. He's an embarrassment, he's utterly shameless, and he's not even close to being fit for the job. His words have endangered lives, for heaven's sake.
Second question just relates to the ICC arrest warrants that took place. So in light of the arrest warrants and us standing by international law, which was absolutely the right decision, and respecting the international legal system, will you as Foreign Secretary and the officials continue to engage and meet with a man who is now wanted for war crimes?
Well, on the basis of what you've just said to me, there are two things that I'm holding at the same time. One is our obligations under the Statute of Rome and our powerful belief both in the rule of law and international humanitarian law. We have to wait in the coming days, weeks, for what they call a notes verbiale to make its way to our embassy so that we enforce or we get instructions that we are to enforce these warrants were they to arise. Under our legislation, Section 2 of the International Criminal Courts legislation, there is an obligation on me to transmit to the courts should those named seek to come into our country. That doesn't allow me any discretion. I will issue that, transmit that to the courts, and then the courts will make their determination under our law, recognising that we are signatories to the Statute of Rome, and these are very, very serious issues indeed. As I said, there is now widespread looting. There are no journalists in Gaza. There are no politicians like me able to go to Gaza, so I'm unable to verify who is behind the looting. But clearly there's now widespread criminality. So the situation, I suspect, is tremendously complex.
Right, so that was a couple of clips there of David Lammy at the Foreign Affairs Select Committee yesterday, and in amongst the lies he told, there were two that stood out in particularly. The worst one, far and away, though, was the one in the second short clip, where Lammy was talking about widespread looting in Gaza. This much is true. There are gangs that Israel are allowing to control the distribution of aid, as little as is getting into those in desperate need in Gaza. That is in itself reprehensible. It shouldn't be happening, and Israel have a responsibility to stop that instead of enable it. But that said, it isn't just lowlifes amongst the surviving Palestinian population that are doing the thieving under Israeli watch, as properties have been looted by IDF soldiers themselves of any valuables they could find, food to supplement their rations. Heck, an Israeli newspaper, Haaretz, even did a glossy feature several months ago of what recipes a group of IDF soldiers were managing to cobble together with what they found in abandoned homes where people have fled, like some kind of barbaric version of a Mary Berry cooking show, combining that with their rations. So we do know who the thieves are, both several months ago and now David Lammy. And we know that because of journalists on the ground at the scene. Yet you went and said to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, there are no journalists in Gaza. That's strange. I could have sworn just this morning I watched a piece of video footage from Al Jazeera, who are very much still operating in Gaza, being shot at in Nazirat, targeted by an Israeli quadcopter just 2 days ago. You saw the reporter and his film crew in clearly marked press flak jackets being targeted on film. The Al Jazeera video titled "Ambulance Crew and Journalists Targeted by Israeli Forces in Gaza." If you want to search it up for yourself and see that video, then please do so. But 182 journalists have literally been killed in Gaza over the last year. Perhaps that's why David Lammy figures there's none left. Israel have already killed them all, maybe. None of them should actually have died, though. It's a war crime to target them. But more have in this conflict than in every conflict, I think, since the First World War. There are surviving journalists, fewer and fewer of them, that are now on Israeli hit lists even, but they're still doing their jobs, even though they're being deliberately targeted, a war crime, or to blind and deafen the world to what is going on, as unsuccessful as Israel have been in that, due to these brave journalists risking their lives to do so. But by making the claim there are no journalists, Israel can now point to his words as justification for killing those who remain, because they can say, look, the British Foreign Secretary has said there are no journalists, therefore these are not journalists then, they must be Hamas then. That's usually what they end up claiming, isn't it? Lammy made the point of saying that he couldn't comment on who was doing the looting because there are no journalists or politicians like me able to go there and check and verify. In other words, not journalists you credit, or not journalists who will tell the story the way you would like, ignoring the fact it is Israel not letting the world see, not letting international journalists or politicians like you in to see for themselves. And frankly, even if they did, you'd probably say no different anyway. That flippantly made quip will resonate around the world, and any journalist killed from this point onwards in Gaza, you'll have helped to justify by making such a stupid claim. Why in God's name have you not retracted that since? When Al Jazeera journalists certainly let Lammy have their say over this, Yumna El Sayed, Al Jazeera English's Gaza Strip correspondent, who said, after 14 continuous months of relentless working for hundreds of Palestinian journalists in Gaza, and over 176 of them killed and tens injured and directly shot at, David Lammy, you are so easily saying that there are no journalists in Gaza. How do you think this world has been able to see everything that has been happening in Gaza since day one? It's because of those journalists and you have denied their existence. I think your stance clearly implies the double standards in which you judge. It's disgraceful to choose willingly to be against the innocent and with the perpetrator despite all evidence. The families of those journalists will never forgive your words, and regardless of them, we Palestinian journalists are there since day one, and no person can ignore our presence or role. Absolutely right. But let's come back to the earlier bit of that footage now, where Lammy was clearly struggling a little bit. I mean, these are legal questions, and he is supposedly a lawyer, but he really did struggle with those questions put to him, didn't he, by Labour MP Abtazam Mohammed, who is Yemeni by birth, incidentally, and this is where the rest of Lammy's lies came out in response to her question as to whether or not Lammy would continue to meet with a man now wanted by the ICC for war crimes. And absolutely, this is a question we all want to know the answer to, isn't it? Since this photo is never going to go away, eh, Dave? Lammy claimed that the government has to wait for days or weeks for something called a note verbally to be delivered, or a set of instructions basically confirming their obligation to carry out the arrest warrant that has been issued, and that this was laid down in Section 2 of the International Criminal Court Act of 2001, no less, which is UK legislation obligating us to meet our responsibilities with regard to the ICC. It isn't, though, Dave. You lied, didn't you, Dave? Or you simply didn't know. Which is it, eh, Dave? The relevant part of the ICC Act 2001, I think, is in Section 14, having had a brief perusal of it earlier, which is in effect the warrant of the arrest. And it simply states, 1. For the purposes of any enactment of rule or law relating to warrants of arrest, A. A Section 2 warrant endorsed or issued in any part of the United Kingdom, or B. A provision warrant issued in any part of the kingdom shall be treated as if it were a warrant for the arrest of a person for an offence committed in that part of the United Kingdom. 2. Any such warrant may be executed in any part of the United Kingdom and may be so executed by any person to whom it is directed or by any constable. And 3. A person arrested under such warrant shall be deemed to continue in legal custody until, in accordance with this part, he is brought before a competent court. So it is treated as a British arrest warrant. Therefore, all that is needed is for the warrant to be checked at the relevant court by a judicial officer that it has in fact come from the ICC, and that is all there is to it. Enact it, enforce it, it's there to be done. That's been issued, there are no hold-ups. Why is Lammy stalling for time, therefore? It's pointless and stupid. There is no note verbally required, and it makes him look a complete wally when it all gets exposed. Lammy has endangered the lives of every journalist active still in Gaza, as there have been throughout the atrocities meted out by Israel and lied about when the ICC arrest warrant before becomes live under British law. He fails as a lawyer, fails as a foreign secretary, frankly fails as a human being at this point. Yet, unless you've gone looking for this story or you read alternative media, covered this story has been in great detail by excellent independent outlets like Squawk Box and Middle East Eye, or you subscribe to this channel, of course, you probably know sod all about Lammy's latest stupidity. So do follow and support your favourites if you can without hardship, because otherwise comments pleading ignorance like Lammy's here will actually end up coming true. If you missed out on Lammy's last unhinged comments regarding not enough people having yet been killed by Israel in Gaza to constitute a genocide, clearly in disagreement with the ICC here, check out my coverage of that story in this video recommendation here, and I will hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.